Does The Batman need to be 3 hours long? It's a big question, isn't it? The runtime for The Batman was revealed. Loads of people were like, oh wow, you know, runtime. Good, great, good to know, I guess. Film has a runtime. Some sarcastic comments came through and kind of is what it is. But this film is slated to be just under 3 hours. 3 hours, I think, with credits. About 2 hours 40 or so without the credits. Or 2 hours 47 is the approximate amount. But then I came across an article, quite literally with the title, Does The Batman Really Need to Be 3 Hours Long? Evidently, yes. So I thought it would make an interesting topic for a video to actually look into it and compare it directly with other films that have actually crossed the 3 hour mark. And just take a look and compare, basically. Because I think like a lot of people have taken a look at this runtime and gone, oh, it's way too long. Way, way, way too long. Ridiculous. And I think, unfortunately, that actually shows more of a condemnation of society's attention spans more than the film itself. If a film is tight enough, it can actually have whatever runtime it requires to tell the story, providing the pacing is correct. 3 hours actually isn't a bad runtime, and if you're running on, you know, first, second, and third act pace, and you literally did it hour on hour, it's not a bad pace to stick to. It could actually work really, really well. So let's take a look at the article. Also, side note, just before we dive into it, if you're new here, do hit subscribe if you enjoy this video. Returning subscribers, check that you're subscribed, because YouTube has been unsubscribing people en masse, actually, en masse. And also check that the bell notifications are turned on to all. Also, I've got a second channel. I will be promoting it a lot more this year, so sorry, but it's 5 seconds. It's in the description box. Please do check it out and support me over there. So let's take a look, ladies and gents. Does The Batman really need to be 3 hours long? Evidently, yes. Read the article and then we'll compare with some other bits and pieces, yeah? So our movie's too long now. It's the same pointless, inane question that's raised every time an upcoming blockbuster's runtime is announced. And we find ourselves here yet again with the recent reveal that The Batman will clock in at just under 3 hours. 2 hours 56 minutes with credits. So I think I am right in saying it's 2 hours 47 minutes without the credits. Now, are films, you know, are films getting longer and longer? No, not really. There have been longer films in the past, over 3 hours in fact. But there have been a spat of films recently that have been over the 2 hour mark. Quite considerably so over the 2 hour mark. I mean, Dune, for instance, was like 2 hours 35 minutes or 2 hours 40 minutes, if I remember rightly. And when that film came out, when the runtime was announced for that, I was concerned with the runtime. But there's a big difference between The Batman and Dune. Both properties have fan bases, one a much larger audience base than the other. And my sort of worry and concern over Dune's runtime was more specifically due to the popularity based on the property, and the runtime in conjunction with the popularity hindering the amount of money that it could pull, because obviously with larger runtimes there are less viewings that can be scheduled in a day, and thus, you know, the less potential chance of people attending and those being full, etc. Whereas a film that runs for 90 minutes, you can fit, you know, 2 screenings in the runtime of a film that runs 3 hours. It's basic mathematics, give or take, obviously. You can fit more in. Thus, regardless of popularity, there's more availability, there's more showings, and then people view it potentially a little bit more. And also, again, because of these types of articles and this type of conversation thread that comes out when a movie is, you know, 2 hour and a half plus, is always the same. It's always, oh, it's too long. This kind of conversation always puts a damper on it. It always makes people a bit concerned to go and watch a film that is too long. Whereas if there weren't, and there were more positive, you know, conversations based around this, going, wow, you're getting a lot more entertainment for your money, aren't you? Wow, that's great. If we went with this kind of conversation string, potentially that would be a bit more beneficial. But I just thought I would note that, because yeah, films, they aren't necessarily getting longer, not at all. There have been films 3 hours plus in the past. I just think ultimately it's unusual now because the Hollywood machine is firmly, it's not in the realms of taking risks. And, you know, films that are 2.5 hours plus, generally speaking, is considered a risk. So when they do come out, that's kind of why the conversations happen. But I think that's a shame. And like I say, I think there's a conversation to be had, and we'll have it, obviously, between the Batman and Dune and the runtimes of each, and one actually being more positive than the other. So this article continues and says, since the news was confirmed, we've already had a few think pieces on the matter, with one even concluding that yes, the Batman is too long, without having seen the movie. Others bemoan the length of films today in general, lest we forget the prominent writer who proposed that no film should ever run past 90 minutes. And, you know, that's all a bunch of absolute codswallops, nonsense. A film should not have to run 90 minutes. Yeah, you can, 90 minutes is fine. Why? Well, because it works on a 30-minute split on each third of the film. First, second and third act. Right? But that can still absolutely firmly work on whatever runtime it has. Is whether you have a good enough editor and a good enough director to manage the time accordingly. Look, nobody is going to deny that some movies do outstay their welcome, and yes, quite a few major studio tentpoles, particularly of the comic book variety, could do with trimming a few minutes, at least, off their runtimes, but the notion that no popcorn movie should ever dare cross the 2-hour mark is simply preposterous. I agree. And then we get this statement here from Roger Ebert, who said, no good movie is too long and no bad movie is short enough. And I agree. No good movie is too long, ladies and gents. If a movie is good enough, it will have whatever runtime and you'll enjoy it nonetheless. It is just about a film being good. And the problem is I think what happens, generally speaking, with these long movies is you come into a battle between the studio executives and then the director with a set vision. Now, not all directors should be given their vision. I think we can all agree with that. There are some directors with absolutely atrocious visions that should never be entertained, and they, strictly speaking, should never be working. But I mean, it is what it is. They do. But they come at loggerheads with one another. The studio wants to trim the fat off, and maybe they trim a bit too much off in an effort to keep it condensed down. But the main brunt of that conversation should have actually started prior to the director being hired with the script, because if you remove essential elements of a film, it doesn't matter what runtime it has. If you're looking to trim the fat off, as it were, you end up harming the film, and it just becomes this convoluted, absolute it just becomes a piece of nonsense crap. So that conversation needs to happen more and more at pre-hiring levels, which doesn't happen these days. You often hear of creative differences time and time again. So I completely agree with that statement. Now, this brings us back to The Batman, a film hardly anyone has seen. Does this latest big screen outing for The Dark Knight really need to be 3 hours long? The director, Matt Reeves, clearly thinks so. How about we give him the benefit of the doubt? Now, I'm not, I don't mind about giving him, the benefit of the doubt specifically. But let's take a look at some other films that are over 3 hours long. Over 3 hours, right? Like 3 hours is quite literally it's 180 minutes. The Godfather Part 2, 202 minutes. 3 hours, 22 minutes long. Yeah, long ass film. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. That film was 2 hours, 1 minute. 2 hours, 201 minutes, sorry. 3 hours, 21 minutes. Long film. But a good one nonetheless. Like, we would agree that's a good film, wouldn't we? I would. I think that's a great film. And again, like, we talk about films being too long. It's not too long. That's fine. Schindler's List, 195 minutes. So just shy of the 3 hours 20 mark, 3 hours 15. The Green Mile, just over 3 hours. In fact, 3 hours 9 minutes, coming in at 189 minutes long. I don't think anyone would say that that's a bad film. That's a superb film with outstanding performances throughout. And there's other ones. Once Upon a Time in America, Seven Samurai. I was looking for more, newish ones to sort of, for the audience demographic here that we have here on this channel. But there's so many. Lawrence of Arabia, 228 minutes. That's hella long. 3 hours 40, nearly 4 hours. Again, I'm literally just scrolling through them all. Ben-Hur, 212 minutes. So again, yeah, long. The Wolf of Wall Street, that clocks in at 3 hours. No one's going to say that film's too long. That took the world by storm. People loved that film. Titanic. I mean, it's very hit or miss on whether people like it or not, but still, 194 minutes. So I think this conversation about a film being too long, I think, is a little bit preposterous, right? It is a case of whether the director is the right person for the job. Now, what has Matt Reeves done film-wise before? Right? I mean, that's important to note, isn't it? What has he done before, which is worthwhile noting? As director is important. So, director, what did he direct? Well, War for the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Now, those films are actually quite tight in terms of their run times. They weren't anywhere close to that sort of level of run time. You have Let Me In, Cloverfield, and that was basically it. And then he kind of shot to this current stardom that he was. Cloverfield, I think, was quite short as well, actually. But is he someone that could handle, so 1 hour 25 minutes Cloverfield, and then War for the Planet of the Apes was 2 hours 20 minutes. I would probably say War for the Planet of the Apes was a little bit too long, but that's because it suffered from pacing issues. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was only 2 hours 10 minutes, but that felt like quite a brisk skip through the movie. So I think Matt Reeves, he didn't have the weight behind him to be able to assert, his sort of power over a film and say, no, I want this film to be this long. And I think that War for the Planet of the Apes has the potential to have some studio interference. That was with Fox, if I remember rightly. If that is Fox, then that makes perfect sense, because I'm pretty certain that did have some issues with Fox behind him. Who was it? Who was the... I'm fairly certain that was by Fox. Anyway, I'm pretty certain that was Fox, and if that is the case, they're well renowned for its studio interference. So, interesting conversation, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Is the Batman runtime 3 hours too long? I don't think so, personally. 2 hours 47 minutes, I think that's fine. I think it is absolutely fine. We're following a detective. You want the crimes to be this lingering issue for a while. You don't want them just to go, there you go, I've solved it. This is supposed to be a detective noir story. And I think the time actually sort of indicates that they're going to be working on that quite a lot. I think that's good. There's a lot of characters to introduce and give it a little bit of screen time. Otherwise, they just throw away pointless characters. I think it's good. Yes, I'm looking forward to this film, and yes, I have a slight bias towards it. But hopefully, I've articulated the reasons as to why I think that runtime is fine. But let me know your thoughts down below. If you're new here, do hit subscribe. Love to have you here for more videos. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend. Take care.